Hello again. So, we've been a bit crazy lately with Scottish recipes and everything else, so let's try something simple today. Some cookies, maybe we'll put in some white chocolate and some raspberry jam just to see what happens. Should be good. So a fairly standard cookie recipe to begin with here. You want a bowl of about 180 grams of flour. At this point, this is when you realise that this bowl isn't big enough for mixing. You don't want to use the stand mixer, you want people to see it, so you're going to have to do a bit of swapping around here. So put the sugar in there, get that back out the way, get the flour back in this one, not sifting anything of course, because you completely forgot to do that. And put the chocolate in here. Okay, now we can actually get started. So this bowl has 180 grams of flour in it, to which we're going to add 3/4 of a teaspoon of baking powder, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and we're just going to whisk that all together. Shouldn't make too much of a difference, everything's going to get mixed anyway, but rules are rules. If you don't do this, people will shout at you. Next we have the bowl that contains about 150 grams of sugar, to which we're adding 110 grams of butter, which, if you've watched this channel for a while, in which case hello the one person that watches, but I've completely forgotten to warm this up to room temperature, so we're just going to have to make do. But all you're going to do is just mix these two together using a stand mixer, and if it is still a little bit warm, give it a little squash. And just gently mix it together. Now you don't have to use a stand mixer for this, or a hand mixer in this case, pardon me. I'd use the mixer for a little bit, but I found it easier to break the chunks up using a spoon. But once it's mixed together, then it's time to add in 1 egg, which you can crack one-handed if you want. That happened by accident, don't know how, well done. And recipe calls for about a tablespoon of vanilla. I tend to put a lot in because you tend not to notice it if you don't put enough in. So put that in, that should give everything a nice texture for you to mix using the hand mixer. And once you're confident the egg and the vanilla essence is fully combined, add in your pre-mixed dry ingredients. And again, you can use a hand mixer to mix these guys up if you want, or just a wooden spoon. I used both. I started with the hand mixer, got a bit sick and tired of it spraying everywhere despite being on its lowest speed and lowest setting and me only pulsing it for tiny parts. So you really don't need the equipment for this, just probably better to use a spoon like I did. But just make sure there are no dry parts of flour or anything unmixed in here. But once you've done this, let's get ourselves the chocolate. So I'm using about 100 grams or so of white chocolate, which I'm just going to chop into small chunks using my bluntest knife. Reserve a little bit of the chocolate at the side. So my bar came with 120 grams. I ate 10 grams because I have no shame, and 10 grams I kept aside in the bowl here, which you'll see later on why that is. But once you've got it all chopped up, just put that in the bowl and give it a little mix in to try and spread it around a little bit so we don't end up with one cookie substantially better than the rest of them. But once you've done this, get yourself a punnet of raspberries and start mixing some of those in. Now, the recipe I was using called for like 130 grams of them, which I felt was a bit much. I mean, this tub was about 150 and in the end I only used half of them. The raspberry flavour is going to be quite strong even if you only use a couple, because we are going to mix them in using our softest, floppiest spatula, which breaks apart instantly, because don't buy spatulas from Poundland, just don't. But the goal is you should get a couple of raspberries mixed in, some of them will break up and infuse your dough with some flavour. Cover it up with a plate, because this we don't need to use plastic wrap, and pop it in the fridge. Now we're going to make a filling for these cookies. We're going to make it from about a tablespoon of powdered sugar and about 70 grams of cream cheese, or Philadelphia. Now you might have noticed I'm putting a lot of sugar in here. That's because I had in my head that I needed 70 grams of sugar. That was a mistake. I fixed that, don't worry. But give yourself a tablespoon of the powdered sugar, or icing sugar, and then about 70 grams of the cream cheese, and while it's open, have a spoon for yourself. Also, don't forget to mix in any flavourings you like. You can add some of the extra vanilla essence, which I taste tested here just to make sure it was all good. And if you do taste anything using the whisk, throw it in the sink afterwards. Now, after your dough has had a chance to chill in the fridge for at least 30 minutes to an hour, depending on how warm a day it is, it's time to combine and build everything. So line yourself some baking trays with baking paper, parchment paper, if you want to call it. Get your jar of jam ready. You can make your own jam if you want, but I'm using seedless jam, and that seems like a lot of effort. So all we're going to do when we're making them is to assemble the cookies is just to take 1 heaping teaspoon of dough, and in that dough we're going to make a little well, a little reservoir for our filling, and then I'm going to patch and cover over the top with another piece of dough. So you can see here I'm making the well and the reservoir in there, and into that we shall get ourselves a teaspoon or so, just however much you think it can take, of the cream cheese, and then do the same again with the jam. And don't go into this expecting them to be perfect or airtight. The recipe I was using did say that, oh, you don't want anything to leak out or try and seal any openings. That's a bit of an impossible ask. Yeah, don't get a fright as well when your teaspoon falls out. But my technique was just to make sure they were in there and then to roll them into a ball and to patch and cover any holes as I went. And you know what? They worked out and they were delicious. The idea that they need to be airtight is silly. Don't waste your time, just roll them up and they'll be delicious just the same. And I also discovered it's easier if you just roll them all out at first and then scoop the fillings into them, because your hands do end up getting universally filthy as you're doing it. But just pile them out, do them in one big batch. I just did one separately for demonstration purposes. And once they're all rolled out, we're going to get the leftover chocolate and sprinkle that over the top. Also, check this out, I had the oven on preheating even though I was putting them in the oven for 10 minutes, and I perfectly guessed that the oven preheats now. Look, got it perfect. I never do that. I always try and do that when I'm making things and it never happens. This time I wasn't meaning to do it and it happened anyway. Lucky me. Anyway, what was I meant to be doing? Oh yeah, put them in the oven between 16 to 18 minutes, the recipe called for, but the second batch took upwards of 20 because I stupidly used that tray with the high sides again. But either way, once they've bent that long in the oven, they're starting to look like they're almost set. Bring them out and they will finish cooking in the counter, as we're going to leave them to rest in the sheet for 10 minutes before putting them onto a baking tray to cool fully. And then once they're fully cooled, then you can get stuck in and eat them. I went and got changed, so I'm going on a dog walk after this. And pick your ugliest cookie that broke apart and use that to taste them. They were really good. Even these ones, which, well, they have the appearance of being slightly undercooked. I think they just ended up slightly more soft baked cookies because of the high sides and the baking tray. All of them are delicious. I filmed this yesterday and there's none left. I ate every single one. So thanks for watching, everybody. I'll put the recipe in the description, and take care, and I'll see you next time.